Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. What's so fucking funny, Adam? What's up, mate?
Look, I don't want to say it, guys, but the $40 HD webcam, which isn't in fact HD, I think is finally giving up the ghost because you're about 3 seconds out of sync with what I'm seeing. So God knows what I'm doing on the stream. I could be miming to my own words. I have no idea what's going on.
The truth is, from our end, it looks totally fine. But the thing is, HD webcam could stand for anything. It doesn't necessarily mean high definition. You know, it could mean,
huge something.
No, let's not say we did. Tom, how's your week been?
Oh, yeah, pretty good. Spent most of it at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival because, my partner Alice is a cabaret comedian, so seeing her show a lot. But also, trying to see all the other artists I know and see their body of work because love to support my friends. And
it's been huge this year.
Yeah, it's been nuts.
It's been crazy, yeah.
And it's been crazy for obviously there's the big acts and stuff going on, but in previous years, both Alice and I, because she's a performer in the festival and I help out on the shows and stuff like that, we both have artist passes, which means if there's spare seats in a gig, you can often you just wait in the line, and once all the paying customers are in and they're like, cool, we got 2 seats up the back, you're an artist, you can get in for free on a show, right?
Awesome.
We haven't been able to do that this year at all, even for the not famous people who are just in 30-seater rooms in places, because everyone's selling out. And it's great. Nearly every artist I know who performed in the festival was like, I had a sold out season. There are people I missed because not because it was I'm too cheap. It was, I missed out on tickets. Even knowing that we can book, we should book rather than using passes, everyone was buying tickets. So
this is without venue limits as well, from what I understand.
Venue limits are purely based on the square meterage, I think, rather than capacity of people, which is good. It wasn't like they capped it at a certain amount. It was you could only have a certain amount.
Town Hall was pretty full last night, and so it was back
exactly.
So
do you reckon?
Yeah, that sort of stuff changing.
Do you reckon that's to do with the pandemic? People are just lots of pent up demand, really keen to go out and see a show, sort of thing, or?
Yes, I think it's both. That, as in we didn't get the festival last year and people missed it and were keen to get out and get involved, particularly because we're now also at a time where we've got less restrictions. I reckon it would have been much different if we were still in that, the COVID normal January kind of thing we were in. But also I think in kind of a cynical sort of way, it's because none of the overseas people are here. I reckon people. Yeah, people who would have gone to see some of the a major person from overseas who was in the Melbourne Town Hall maybe instead went to a 30-seater room and took a chance on a local comedian instead.
No one's going to go see a 3,000 seat theater for Arj Barker because Arj Barker is not there, sort of thing.
Well, Arj Barker is
he is here. He lives here.
I was doing it for instance, but there you go.
People like Ross Noble was here, for example. So, it wasn't that there were no international acts, but, it was a huge difference. Although, funnily enough, actually, I watched the awards for the Comedy Festival yesterday. And actually, one of our friends won the Best Newcomer Award, which was awesome.
Nice.
Super cool. Charlie's Angel, who's very funny. You should check him out. But there was, the People's Choice Award. But that was decided this year because Alice said something. She was like, oh, it'll be Will Anderson because he's won it for 7 years in a row because he has such a huge fan base. If it's a popularity contest, it is, right?
He is the people's choice, as it were.
Yeah. But instead, this year, they said they based it on tickets sold. So the winner was Daniel Sloth, even though he did 2 nights at Hamer Hall. But because it's Hamer Hall.
2009. Yeah,
you sell out 2 nights at Hamer Hall. You've smashed even Alice had a sold out season of 11 nights, but in a smaller venue. I just thought you got to do a percentage ratio. There's got to be a mathematical way to make that more fair. You can't just be I'm going to do 1 night in Hamer Hall
It's weird. The winner seems to be Kevin Hart, who played One Night at Rod Laver Arena. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's the people's choice. I don't know.
The People's Choice Award for the festival was the Collingwood v Demons game.
Yeah, it's the biggest. Yeah, it was just The Rock. He just filled out an entire stadium. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing.
Absolutely crazy.
The guys listen.
Sales nationwide, like nationwide, worldwide.
Adam.
Sorry, Adam.
Sorry, like my HD webcam just froze up again. The thing is though that the arts they don't contribute to the economy, so there's no point funding it. So the whole dollar multiplier effect.
Oh hell no! Yeah.
Don't worry
I'm sure bars and theaters just made no money this festival. Like no money was changing hands for these thousands upon thousands of tickets paid for with, I want to say, money.
Adam,
I want to say money.
For those of you who aren't aware, Adam is doing his best impression of a shitposting LNP minister saying that the arts have no value and that's why we shouldn't fund them. He doesn't, in fact, believe those things.
Sarcasm.
It translates really well over Zoom. Speaking of LNP ministers that are shitposting, Andrew Lamming. As you may notice that Unnatural Selection is a news and politics podcast. I don't know if we brought that up at the start, but
close enough.
It does seem, our remit does seem to mean that we end up focusing on just like shitty members of parliament. Like it seems to be the shitty member of parliament show lately, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but
there's one each week that are coming into the
the good news is there's no shortage. So
yeah. We're rarely hearing about the non-shitty ones.
Oh, George, you must be so lucky. You know, you talk about Trump for 4 years. What are you going to do after there's no Trump? You guys have had it served up on a silver platter for you for the last 5 years. What the fuck are you going to fucking talk about, George, you talentless cunt? Well, turns out there's lots of stuff to talk about. Turns out people are being shitty ministers every week. Andrew Lamming, carryover champion from last week's competition, and the week before that, has launched his way into shitterdom again this week by basically saying, "Hey, I know I said I wasn't going to contest the next election, but fucking
I still might, but
come at me, cunt."
I still might, but like I'm not gonna contest the next election. What's that? You mean there's a slight chance maybe this will all blow over? All right, well no, I'll stay.
How about no consequences? Have we tried no consequences?
Yeah.
Let's try no consequences.
Have we tried just how about let me get away with it? Is that on the table?
So just to be clear, so Andrew Lamming, for those people that fell asleep from 2 weeks ago to today.
Yeah, if you've fallen into a coma, 5 years ago and you've just woken up, boy, have I got some news for you. So Donald Trump did in fact become president. There's this thing called a coronavirus, and Andrew Lamming is still a member of parliament.
So Andrew Lamming, a couple of scandals. One of them was he was, basically harassing women online, trying to take photos of people like in inappropriate angles. Not great stuff,
especially amongst all the
Go one step further, Adam. Not great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's safe to. You know what? I don't care who hears it. I think it's very ungreat stuff to try and take upskirt photos of people. So Andrew Lamming, notorious piece of shit, has basically called the government's bluff and said, "Hey, I'm not taking my name out of the ring for pre-selection for my seat, my safe Liberal seat for next year, which I won by 10 points.
You'll have to do it for me.
You can kick me out if you like. I don't quit.
Yeah.
You have to fire me."
And so at this point, there hasn't been a decision on that. So there's like a pre-selection process they're going through where that's being decided.
Mm.
He's currently on leave to undertake behavioural change training, which sounds
that sounds like what I'm doing with my
sweet sexual harassment scandal leave that we've just been hearing about.
It sounds like what I'm doing with my dog Maggie at the moment, behaviour change. We did the click, and we go, yes, good girl, and we give her a treat. And every time he doesn't sexually harass a woman, we go, yes, good boy, and we give him $10,000 from the taxpayer.
And he's also being probed by Australia's election watchdog as well. So there's a few things going on with him. But
probed is an interesting verb there.
Because I think if the other thing is there's a financial aspect to it. So if he is like kicked out, like if they physically, because the thing about they're not going to physically kick him out this term because it would mean that like one, they don't have majority. But secondly, if he's actually kicked out, he might be eligible for a taxpayer funded payment of like $105,000.
Which doesn't that sound like the biggest, dodgiest, like the absolute law that you would 100% propose if you're a dodgy fucking minister? Like, okay. You guys can kick me out, but new law, here's an idea. If I get kicked out for anything short of illegality, I just get $100,000. How does that sound? Cool.
Just $100,000.
Cool. We'll just round up. We'll just round it up to $105,000. That's fine. So totally fine.
It's a resettlement allowance to MPs who retire involuntarily, not to stand for re-election following loss of party endorsement or for reasons other than misconduct.
It's the
I think like involuntary retirement is just being fired,
right? At any other job, I got involuntarily retired from a company a little while ago. I did not get $100,000.
Yeah, were you fired from your last job, George?
No.
You've applied for this role here. Why'd you leave your last role? Were you fired? Oh, no, I was involuntarily
Well, look, first of all, thank you for meeting with me in this abandoned shipyard. No, I was not fired. I was involuntarily retired. Where are you taking me?
Say no more.
So, this is part of the government's new shithead keeper program, which allows them to keep a hold of all the shitheads that they've got in their party in order to retain their slim majority. So government's creating jobs left and right, you know?
But the weird thing is that in his like factional section of Queensland, because the pre-selection process for Liberals is pretty complicated, but basically there are people that are willing to like support him for pre-selection. They don't want to bring in the headline from one of the papers today was they don't want to bring in an outsider. Whatever that means.
The actual quote was that they the title of the article is branch members threaten to quit if LNP parachutes outsider into Lamming's seat. And I love the verb parachutes because it makes it seem as though it's like completely unexpected. Like who could have expected it after a month of stories about his misconduct that they would get someone else to fill that seat for pre-selection after he said specifically that he would not run at the next election. They're like, this is outrageous. What an absolute terrible surprise that we could not have seen coming given the months worth of articles that have been coming out about our guy being an absolute shitheel. Okay, totally unforeseen. Parachuted in.
I mean, it's good for Labor in some ways because it's given them something they can dig into and have a crack at. But I mean,
as we all know, Labor is the very best at making hay while the sun is shining and just seizing every available opportunity to stick the knife into the opposition. They're absolute geniuses at it, marketing geniuses as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I've heard that they're going to do it. I haven't actually heard them doing it yet.
I did see Anthony Albanese was at a netball game, so. If anyone's wondering where he is. So
yep. It's great though, because he had that car accident, so it's good that he's up and about.
It's good that he's getting out and about, having a snag, meeting some people. They don't know who he is, but he's meeting them. So.
He's DJ Albo. I don't know what you're talking about. I love DJ Albo. He's my favourite. I got a friend who actually went and saw him do a set once at the Corner Hotel a couple of years ago.
Any good?
He said it was. Like, he didn't say it was, like, the best thing ever, but he said it was good for a laugh. Like, it was fun. It wasn't the worst music. He just played a couple of things on his playlist.
It sounds like DJ Albo is just a guy with an iPod shuffle. When was this?
This was back, so my friend Jake, who you guys know, so it would have been back when he was here, so probably like 2015, sort of around that sort of time.
It just goes to show you how carefree everything pre-2016 was. It's just like, let's go see a politician be a DJ. Whatever, 2015. We'll never live it down. It's never going to get better than this. Neck minute, Trump, pandemic, everything falls into global economic crisis. Now we just turn up to the show. Yeah. It might have been the last fun thing that happened.
But the best part about this news is that it's not actually the main thing in the news this week. Like, it's like this Andrew Laming thing. It's a sideshow. It's like, oh, by the way, this is happening. But the main thing this week, the news, was the further progression of the Cartier watches scandal saga. It's become a bit of a saga. We spoke about it when it happened, I think, a couple of months ago?
About 5.5 months ago.
And we were pretty critical, I think, of Christine Holgate at the time. So the concept was that she gave, and these were all the headlines, at the time. So Christine Holgate, CEO of Australia Post being a taxpayer-owned company, gave Cartier watches, and Cartier has
expensive, fancy watches.
Yep. To 4 executives for securing a lucrative bank deal. And Scott Morrison famously got up and said it did not pass the pub test and all this kind of stuff. And
she's been asked to step down, and if she doesn't like it, she can go.
And this was all, it's been leading up to, I guess, this week where she did, in fact, step down. And there's also a Senate. I love a good Senate committee. There's been a Senate hearing, basically, about what happened, and there's been evidence from both sides and that kind of thing. Turns out the first take on it that we had and most of the media had wasn't quite up to scratch.
Here's the thing. Okay, I did watch the 7:30 Report interview that she did with Laura Tingle this week, where she did go, and obviously after the Senate hearing, where she did sort of go to some lengths to explain, yes, I was authorized to give financial compensation up to, the amount of $150,000 for this deal. But, I mean, that's her contention. I haven't seen any reporting on this, which is and yes, that is the case, right? So the media reporting at the time was she gave Cartier watches, and the impression that we were all given was that wasn't allowed. And just on the face of it, doesn't seem like that is a thing that should be allowed. Now, she's contended she was allowed to give up $250,000. I'd love to see some confirmation either way as to whether or not this was allowed, because that seems to be the entire issue, right? We could put this whole thing to bed if we know for sure one way or the other whether or not she was allowed to give financial compensation for achieving this goal of getting this bank contract, which would get millions of dollars for the organization.
I don't think anyone's disputed it since she said that.
But then that should be part of the, it's not part of any of the stories that I've read about this saying objectively this is true or untrue. So our hot take on it at the time was the same hot take as everyone else in the media had, who has fact checkers and people at their disposal to determine whether or not this is true in the first place before publishing it. To the extent that we jumped the gun that everyone else also jumped as well in the media. But having said all of that, I really don't like Christina Holgate. I think she's smug and she seems very coached, and
Are you saying someone who got paid $1.2 million a year, which was last year, down from $2.15 million a year?
Wasn't she getting $17,000 a week or something?
It was a lot of money. She was getting paid pretty well.
I'm sorry. I'm just very and she's it was the most horrible instance of bullying that I ever did see. And I was just is she trying to talk? To me, it sounds like she's someone who's not so smart, who's had a bunch of lawyers speak to her and say, this is how you talk smart. And now she's 5 months later, she's got the perfect sort of responses to everything, and she's got everything ready to go. And Laura Tingle's serving her these softballs, and she's just bullying is bad, sexism is bad. And we're sexism is bad. Thank you, Christina. I feel she turned up dressed in white like a suffragette. They're trying to sort of, it seems like a very coordinated, targeted political kind of attack against the current government, which, I mean, I'm fine with because I don't like the current government, but also at the same time, I don't, Christina Holgate just rubs me the wrong way. I have limited sympathy for a millionaire losing her job. Thoughts, feelings?
So the reason why she's been saying that she's been bullied, and obviously she's been under some mental duress, which is not ideal. Basically, when the Prime Minister in Parliament effectively threw her under the bus. The other thing is that she said is that she was pushed out by the chairman. So the chairman is, and there's conflicting reports. The chairman saying one thing, of Australia Post, and the CEO is saying, or the former CEO is now saying something different. So she's saying she was forced out. The CEO was like, no, I just said you had to step down for 4 weeks while the hearing was happening.
I was just saying, take a break, chill out, babe.
But I mean, you could read into that just step down.
I have no doubt that she's telling the truth. I'm certain that she was told to step down. That, given the forcefulness of the rhetoric from Scott Morrison in Parliament, that was like clear and obvious political pressure to get rid of her. Like,
the Prime Minister has called the chairman, and the chairman's gone, okay, yeah, cool.
I'm not disputing any of that. I think that's all probably accurate. I think, all things considered, she is probably on the right side of this. I just don't like her as a person. And I don't know if that counts.
That doesn't count, George.
Does that count for anything?
No, it doesn't.
Am I the asshole? I just don't.
You're the asshole.
I don't like her. I think she's smug and full of herself and arrogant.
All right, Tom, what's your take?
She seems like just a rude person.
We've essentially, I think, hit the nail on the head. I mean, like, I'm not surprised that someone who was the CEO getting gajillions of millions of dollars a year is very prepared and has like prepped for these kinds of things.
There's a difference between prepped and coached. She sounded coached. That's what it sounded like.
If you're a millionaire,
I'm sure she's been like fed this sort of, like, she could probably afford the best advisors that money can buy, right? And it's just maybe not so good at delivering it in a way that sounds like it was convincing. Anyway, my point is that like in terms of the actual, like, the Watchers situation and everything like that, it seems like one of those we don't like what she did, but it seems that she was allowed to do it.
Right.
So we should be more angry that she's allowed to do it rather than that she did it.
Right.
Per se,
yeah.
Right? Like,
and also,
the system, hate the game, not the player, kind of thing.
If I was one of the top executives that found out after the fact, like, wait, hang on, you were allowed to give us 150 grand in cash and you gave me a watch instead, I'd be like, give me the fucking cash, bro. What are you doing? I got absolutely stooged. What do you mean you could have given me 150? You just chose not to? What are you doing?
The weird thing is that this kind of behavior in corporate Australia, if this wasn't a taxpayer-owned company,
it would just be called commissions. It'd be a commission scheme.
And the thing is, like, in fairness, I mean, as she said, if you're one of these executives and you're working 24 hours a day, ignoring your family or whatever you're doing, to get this across the line, perhaps you'd like some, not kickbacks or I can't say that word.
Remuneration.
Remuneration.
For that.
Is it remuneration or remuneration?
I always said remuneration, but
Newman.
Maybe I've been wrong.
I don't say it because I can't say it.
Money. Give me money.
Give me money for that.
But like, you're right. And this was the take I had on it at the time. I was like, well, if it's allowed, then it's just a compensation scheme. It's commissions. This is exactly what sales people do all day, every day, is you get a big deal and you get some sort of compensation, additional money as a result of getting that money into the organization. Like, that's pretty fucking standard. I think the thing that really, sort of blew the whole thing up was that it was Cartier watches. And when it came to light, was in the middle of a pandemic. And this is obviously targeted, right? This is something from Labor. Labor, got some sort of tip off from someone and they say, hey, do you want a juicy story? The head of Australia Post gave a bunch of Cartier watches. If it was 20 grand in compensation, they would have gone, okay, well, was she allowed to give it? Yes. Okay, well, that's the end of the story. But the fact that they were Cartier watches, it's the middle of a pandemic, it's October, people are really suffering financially. Labor obviously used this as a cudgel to give the Morrison government a black eye, and Christine Holgate just kind of got caught up in the middle of that. But like, in the whole sort of like era of believing women and, all the female sexual assault stories that have been happening in Parliament, like Labor has, like Homer Simpson, backed into so many hedges over this. They're just kind of like, oh, I don't know what happened. We're just asking questions. See you guys later. Bye.
And that's also... Sorry, Adam.
No, I was just going to say, even Christine Holgate has said, oh, look, if I had my time back again, I'd probably give them a Seiko watch instead.
Well, hey, Seikos are not very good.
Sorry, Tom, keep going.
Oh, no, and more, it's also kind of, it's telling, like, sort of what the big response has been, like, from the government, like, in pushing to have her ousted, yet Andrew Laming is still, like, doing what he's doing, right? So, that's another big part of this. It's like, oh, we'll throw the woman CEO under the bus for doing something that she was allowed to do, but just the public aren't big fans of. But all the rape, nah. That's fine. Let them stay. Let them keep eating their cake.
And
let's have an
independent commission inquiry, Royal Commission cooperating with the commission. I welcome the results of the commission. Oh, I've just been fired by the commission. Was that the joke? Was that where you were going with that?
Definitely. Although
it is definitely something that is of note that this government, and it's something I've noted before, that at every opportunity, it seems like the Liberal Party has women specifically to have people that are disposable. Like it is not a coincidence that the people who seem to take the fall in LNP governments, the people that are in marginal seats as opposed to safe seats, for LNP, members and things like that, they all happen to be women. They have a track record of throwing women under the bus, to keep themselves safe. So to the extent that it's probably is a bit sexist, the way he treated her versus the way he treated, there was some other guy that got, it was like the next day or the day after, some dude who got caught up in some scandal, and he's like, well, there's an investigative process and we need to follow the process and see what the outcome is. It's just like very measured and like deliberate about that guy. But when talking about Christine Holgate, she's like, this fucking bitch can get out of here. Fuck this bitch. Like it was very, very vociferous in his criticism about her in a way that he was not about other male members. So it's like, okay, well, clearly there is something to that criticism, but I mean, what's going to happen as a result? Probably nothing. Is it like us making note of that doesn't help things at all? But it is.
Us making note of most things doesn't really make many things better. But here we are.
The other thing was that the timing of so basically the timing of some of these announcements were pretty bad as well. So basically, the day before the Senate inquiry was meant to begin, the Australia Post announced that Paul Graham, who's the former Woolworths Group executive, was now the new CEO. And then he put a statement out, just ignored the fact that Christine had been like thrown under the bus. He's like, I'm just really looking forward to getting to work with all the people.
Really love the post office, and let's not talk about anything else that's going on about the post office in the news.
I really love the millions of dollars that I'm going to get from doing the post office.
So the other thing with this is that Christine Holgate, apparently there was news about privatising a part of Australia Post's
parcel business. So BCG, Boston Consulting Group, gave them a report which was commissioned by the government, and that was the report that the government wanted, and so it kind of said what the government wanted them to say by all accounts, which is, the parcel part of the business needs to be privatised. And the other aspect to do that is to sort of sell it off and not have the Aus Post run it anymore. Whereas reports that Christina Holgate commissioned said that like here are various opportunities and ways for us to grow the business and get more revenue, and really sort of treating it like
jobs as well.
Save jobs and prevent a bunch of, I think it was over 100 rural postal branches being closed. So clearly there was some like political maneuvering there to maybe oust her as a result of that. Like LNP government, they generally want to privatize things and that sort of stuff.
The other thing with BCG is that I think this is public knowledge, the former CEO of Australia Post has a relationship with BCG as well.
When you say has a relationship?
Well, he used to do some work for them, basically. So with that particular consulting group, there's obviously an ongoing thing with Australia Post and the government. There's like they're familiar with what's going on. I mean, that's, to be fair, if you're employing a consulting group, you want them to be familiar with the business. But there's certainly, in terms of who's commissioning the report and the agendas they've got, there's the viewpoint you start from influences perhaps the results in that instance.
Government commissions report, government finds, government plans are good.
I just feel bad because I think was about 5 months ago. I think it was. I can't remember now. A few months ago, we were like, like, why would you do that? And if she's allowed to do it, like, I feel kind of bad because she got.
But this is the key question, which is been answered. It's like, was she allowed to? All of the other like all of this other stuff in the story is completely irrelevant. Once we've answered the question, was she allowed to do it or not? If the answer is yes, then all of this is not a story. But if not, then it was completely justified what happened to her.
Yeah.
So, and that's not been answered with any clarity, at least not from anything that I've seen. So, I think in all reality, she probably was allowed to do it, and she probably got thrown under the bus. But I also have no sympathy for her whatsoever, just because I don't like her as a person. I understand that that's like unfair, but
you've never met her.
I saw an interview with her, for half an hour. I sat there, I watched it. She just seemed phony. I have limited sympathy for millionaires who got stooged out of their millionaire jobs. It's not like she's not a board member elsewhere. She's still a millionaire. She's still making,
she'll be fine.
Stupid money. Like she's going to be just fine.
She'll work it out.
I don't see her working on the front desk of the post office taking parcels. I don't see that happening.
I mean, it's a small blip in the radar, really, in terms of the scheme of things, particularly given that our vaccine rollout is now not really happening.
World leading,
much.
Adam.
First
in queue. World leading.
World leading in being shit.
So we talked about it last week that obviously the AstraZeneca vaccine is no longer really an option for people under the age of like 55 50. Or whatever the 50 the age is, and they're waiting for basically 6 months until a bunch of the Pfizer vaccines will become available in Australia. Allegedly.
Which was the original timeline, by the way. I think they got slightly more dosages than they had previously, but November was always the timeline, and it was always for whatever it was, 10 million doses. It ended up being like 20 million as opposed to 10 million. They just love re-announcing stuff that's already been fucking in the works.
Well, it is what it is to a point, but the thing that there's a McKell Institute, who are basically a think tank, they came out with a report this week, which said that delays will increase the chance of lockdowns, which, I mean, yeah, obviously.
Well, yeah, because fewer people are vaccinated.
But what they've said is that it could, hit something like $1.4 billion to the economy, depending on sort of circumstances leading up to that, until we get to herd immunity or whatever that means.
I'm always curious how they do this modelling, because the Murdoch media during the height of the Melbourne lockdown was saying that Melbourne's lockdown was costing $1 billion a day. So I'm curious. $11 squillion a second. Dan Andrews, fucking Nazi Dan Andrews. Dictator Dan. Yeah, so I'm curious as to where they get that model. But certainly, like, if we have a situation where, look, obviously we're heading back into winter now, like the weather this week has been sort of, trending back towards the chilly and the rainy and the shit. Those circumstances force people inside, and, there's inevitable, especially with no one wearing masks or anything anymore, seems like a really good chance that we could have another outbreak later in the year. And we'll just have to lock down and deal with that and just have another year of this, basically, until we could get our vaccines, hopefully starting in November, December, and into next year. So, great.
Yep. Enjoyable.
I mean, their vaccine rollout was like way behind anyway, and it's exactly what I said, isn't it? That they'd blame the AstraZeneca situation for why the vaccine. Oh, well, it would have been going perfectly if it weren't for the AstraZeneca, but we've had to scrap that. Anyway, so now the target is there are no targets. Go fuck yourself.
I mean, it's a convenient out, right?
Super
for a program
convenient.
that was already well behind. They may well have caught up if AstraZeneca, because they were manufacturing AstraZeneca here in Australia. CSL were going to be doing it. There was a whole thing with it, and you look, to an extent, AstraZeneca, like my dad's getting it, as someone who's immunocompromised, I think in a couple of weeks. So you can still get it, like if you are over the age and you are, designated as needing to be vaccinated, you can still get that vaccine. But it is like it's almost like it's too convenient for the government to a point. But it obviously matches up with all the advice that they're receiving from overseas and other stuff as well.
I did see an article this week that the National Cabinet is now going to be meeting weekly or twice weekly in order to
twice a week is what they wanted. Yeah,
twice a week in order to try and sort of coordinate more fully on the sort of vaccine rollout and all this sort of stuff. I saw this great cartoon which said it was old Scotty from marketing talking to all the premiers saying like, great, so we just really need to hand this vaccine mess down to you guys, the states, for you guys to fix it up so I can announce some good stuff happening. Like, and it was just like, yeah, that's more or less exactly what's going to happen. It's like, we should really let the states that we were fucking kicking in the guts all through the pandemic, saying that they were shit and they were handling it wrong and they should have opened it up. Meanwhile, the one thing that we had responsibility, what do we have responsibility for? Aged care, JobKeeper, which has since wound up. Like all these things that the federal
Ruby
government...
Princess.
Say again?
The Ruby Princess.
The Ruby Princess. All these things that the federal government had responsibility for, they've ballsed up to the nth degree. And they've ballsed up the vaccine rollout as well. Like, actually, maybe the states... the states are doing a pretty good job. We should let them take the lead on this. It's like, oh, really, ScoMo? Really, mate? What an interesting perspective that you have brought to this discussion all of a sudden.
That's how federalisation works, George. Yeah, so, keep the faith, guys. I'm sure the packed venue I was in last night was COVID-free. There's nothing to be worried about.
Pandemic's over, haven't you heard?
I
have actually been catching myself, like, kind of treating it like that, and I have to keep, like, reminding myself, like, it's like, oh, yeah, well, God, during the pandemic, like, it's over. Like, it seems to be that people seem to use the term like the pandemic to refer to when we were in turbo lockdown. It's like no, that was just last year. That was just last year. Pandemic's still happening
during the height of the pandemic.
I still keep catching myself doing it, being like, and that's what it was like during the pandemic. It's not over yet, Tom. Got to keep remembering that.
India and Brazil are having a really bad time. I'm
pretty sure my super smart relative in the family said India was doing great because they didn't have the lockdowns that we did, and India was doing perfectly fine. So I don't know what you're talking about. They
were doing fine.
Everything in India is great. That's great. We should do everything that India's doing. They're nailing it.
Do your own research, Adam.
Do your own research.
They didn't lock down, and people stopped caring about it. Although, sorry, that's a lie. They did lock down for a period, like in Mumbai and I think a few other cities, but they haven't announced any sort of real measures since. And like the problem is now is that they've got flare-ups in various cities, and it's just the population, like it's not being taken seriously by a lot of people, and hospitals are being overwhelmed. Obviously, in Brazil, you've got Bolsonaro doing nothing,
doing whatever the fuck he wants.
But they're literally just digging mass graves every day. Like there are parts of the world that are, Papua New Guinea's pandemic is kicking off after being relatively good for the last 12 months. So, this is still a thing. And all you need is one person to fly back on a plane from somewhere with it and then go to a packed comedy venue or whatever it may be. And then off we go.
Yeah, it is literally like... And I remember seeing Scott Morrison saying something to the effect of like, oh, we just have to sort of be comfortable with opening things up and having about 1,000 cases a week. Like, we just need to sort of like get comfy with that. And I was like, no. Or you could vaccinate us. And then we
it's like,
we don't have any cases.
Because like 1,000 a week, like I know compared to what we were having with like 800 a day, when it was really bad for us. But so like we locked down over less though. Like when even when it was fewer than 1,000 a week, like we locked down over that. We shouldn't get used to that.
And the thing is, like,
really bad had we not.
The business community is also very not thrilled about this because they need to do business, and commerce requires people running around and doing things and throwing cash at each other. Like, you can't have business like for the party that talked about being the economic stewards of getting Australia back to business. It's like the one thing you guys actually had to nail in this process in order to allow us to do that, and they dropped the ball so immensely fucking hard that even the business community is like, well, we can't have no targets for vaccination. Like, we need some targets. Like, you need to give us an indication of, like, when do we order the shipment from China and shit. Like, you can't just...
Yeah. Like
have
if,
no
if you run
targets.
like a cafe in the CBD, you can't just be like living your year being like, well, but tomorrow we could just suddenly go to zero patronage and income.
Yeah.
At a moment's notice. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like that's not feasible long term.
No,
It
Tom, the
worked for us
pandemic's
last
over.
year.
It's
Yeah,
finished.
it
The
worked for us
jobless
last
numbers.
year.
The jobless numbers are only at 5%. JobKeeper did its job. That's why we ended it, and everything's great. So don't worry about it.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, great. Everything's back to normal. Whoop-de-doo.
What
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
understand
we'll have a look
is
at the
that
numbers next month and see what happened as a result. But like for now, the numbers totally normal. Don't worry. You
Don't
know how you're
think
thinking
about
about it. Don't think about it.
The thing that I find interesting is that they haven't thought of a policy financially really to provide any reassurance to that aspect. So like,
Nope.
obviously, if you're going to, the states will potentially announce snap lockdowns as they have done over the next 6 to 12 months, and that's just going to be a way of life.
We're expecting them to at this stage. If there's no vaccination, there will be further outbreaks. There will be other lockdowns. That's the only thing we can do.
But you'd think from a federal point of view, you'd go, well, okay, as the Prime Minister, as the federal cabinet, we've got no ability to stop states doing that at this point. Like, it's a well-established process. Why don't we, to give the business community some assurance, announce like an insurance scheme where, you know, if you're locked down for 10 days, you can claim X amount of dollars, similar to JobKeeper, but like directly to the business to recoup what potentially losses you may have earned.
Adam, they've only had 13 months to get this together. You can't expect a federal government to be able to put aside a big pot of money and say, hey, anyone who needs it because of a snap lockdown, take this money. It'd be impossible to administer. They've only had a year and a bit to get their heads around this, Adam. You got to give the man credit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, call me a rushed, unthought through philosopher on this subject, but that they could investigate it. There could be an inquiry. There could be a commission. There could be some.
We're too busy talking about the Cartier watches, Adam. Okay, it's much too important.
So I don't know. There's work to be done. I think in that sphere, there's obviously a gap. Which no one's really wants to walk across the bridge and address. I know some state, like I think, for instance, like the Victorian government has some schemes going where, you know, businesses can claim back certain amounts for certain things. Well, they had done in the past, but I don't know whether that's ongoing. But
yeah, I know the Victorian government had a scheme for landlords where you could claim like a certain dollar amount. I think it was like $6,000 per apartment or things, or per like property rented out. Sort of thing to help, you know, commercial landlords and that sort of stuff. It's interesting that, you know, for the people who, you know, they criticize the Labor state government the most during our extended lockdown last year, whatever it was, over 100 days. You know, for all the criticisms that we had about them, like the state governments are the ones that are really doing all the heavy lifting in terms of actually getting assistance out to affected communities. Like, they're the ones really doing all the work in terms of putting together these schemes, administering them, getting help out to people. Like, all the federal government has really done during this crisis is announce real big numbers at podiums. Like, in effect.
But, I mean, it's fine though, because it's not just announcements to do with the vaccine. There are other things in the works.
There's other things that we can announce that won't happen.
Yeah. But one of the announcements that they announced this week was they commissioned a new ship in the Navy. So the HMAS, Her Majesty's Australian ship, Supply, aptly named, was commissioned.
Yeah, HMAS Supply is a...
Pretty
I don't
boring.
know. That's not the one I would have gone with in the writer's room. And...
It supplies other ships. Like, it tells you what it does.
You reckon maybe Bodie McBoatface Tom would have been a more of a crowd pleaser?
Just something kind of badass, you know, like, you know, HMAS Foxtrot or something. Like, you got to make it sound all military and cool.
HMAS Alpha Tango.
Yeah, or
like
HMAS Whiskey Tango Foxtrot or something, because then it also is the WTF boat. But you know, like, you know, you can make it sound all badass, you know, but
what about the HMAS Twerk? There you go. That's something.
Well, yeah. So that's the thing. So the reason that this event took people's interest wasn't the poorly naming the ship. but rather the event
I got another
which
one.
celebrated it.
It meets the HMA's demand every now and then. It's a little economics joke, but yeah.
I'm just going to give that the silence that deserves.
Sorry, I know you're in the middle of a sentence. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Proceed.
Good. No, totally worth it. No, yeah. So the reason this has caught people's attention was the event, the opening sort of ceremony event of unveiling HMAS Supply, and particularly a certain aspect of it, which was that there was a dance troupe were hired just to put on a performance, and part of that performance involved some twerking, because twerking is a dance move, and people were outraged. It seems they thought that maybe having these women dance in what people argued provocatively, etc., at a military ceremony of unveiling a ship was inappropriate. And I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. They're probably
cares,
squatting
really,
as
right?
much as probably squatting as much as ScoMo during that miners thing that he went to the other day. So
during his morning stretch marketing stunt. But let's get to that. But so the way that this story evolved was very interesting, I think, because I saw videos of the dance going around where people being like, "Huh, this is weird." These women in like booty shorts, red shirts and berets doing a dance move in front of a Navy vessel. I'd be like, kind of look like odd choice for a military ceremony.
You know what
whatever.
They kind of look like the female of Red Alert 3, the video game, which is like a Soviet.
I
bit of that, I guess got a bit of the vibe of like, the red Soviet beret, gorgeous woman from Command and Conquer Red Alert. You're right, Adam. Actually, I hadn't put that together. That's very funny. But so there was that going around, which people were like, oh, okay. Like, I can't remember the woman's name who captured it on Twitter, but it was just a bit silly. But then it became a big controversy because people were outraged that these women were dancing at this event in front of the top brass and the Governor General.
As we all know,
this sort of
the Governor
stuff.
General does not get erections. That's not a thing that the Governor...
just
Once you actually ascend to the position of Governor General, the Queen, when she knights you, also circumcises you. Also, not circumcise, castrates you. So you're not actually allowed to have... your memberage in attendance,
any sort of thing like that.
As part of your official duties as Governor General, so obviously.
But yes,
do you understand what I'm saying?
People were getting real mad about that. Yeah, people getting real mad about that, and it further came out though that wasn't true. That the dance happened, yes, at an event for this ship, but the Governor General and the military top brass and all that sort of stuff arrived later to give their speeches. They were not in attendance when the dance was happening. And there was an ABC News report about the event that had footage of the dancers and, like, while that was happening, cutting to seeing the Governor General and the top brass, like, sitting in their chairs looking. You can't see what they're looking at, cutting back and forth. And so people said, that didn't happen.
That's,
and
misleading.
ABC were like, well, we were sorry, our sources told us whatever, that they were there, so that's why we cut the thing together, and then they amended it and removed that sort of footage. Media Watch had a field day over that sort of stuff.
Hi, I'm Paul Barry, and I love a good excuse to shit on my own employer, the ABC.
Yeah, my own
Let's
network.
get stuck in, boys.
Yeah, and so...
Carl really fucked up. Didn't
then,
you, Carl?
Yeah.
Didn't you fuck up on this one? Yeah, it's Paul. I'm doing Media Watch. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Carl, what a piece of shit.
But then on top of that, of course, because this involves women doing their jobs, the dance troupe have been copping a shit ton of social media flack and abuse and all this sort of stuff.
Why?
Not fair at all.
They were just doing their jobs.
They're dancers. They were hired to do a gig, and they did the gig. They did it amazingly. They are amazing dancers, and done.
Okay,
that was
let's
it.
not. I saw the clip. It was fine. They were pretty good.
They're really good at what they do.
Certainly, Carly all the way out the back was a bit off on the timing when they got down on the ground. But I understand it's a more difficult maneuver. Anyway, they're fine. Let's not overdo it.
They're apparently a well-known dance school in the area. But yeah, like good for them. They were really they were hired to do a thing, and they did the thing, and they did the thing well, and there we go. But
it was no tap dogs. Let's put it that way.
Anyway, beside the point, they did the gig.
Yeah, beside the point, but that's the thing. They're copying all this abuse when literally all they've done is were hired for a job and they did a job.
Yes.
Like,
that's I had no idea.
Leave them out of this.
Very unfair.
But then this got me thinking, right? Because they're copying all the stuff and they really shouldn't be. There was apparently like other things happened at this event. Like it was designed to be like, by the council or whomever, like quite a cultural thing of like these different things happened that represented the community in the area and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't just dancers that were there. I don't know what the other things were because I guess they didn't capture anyone's attention. But so that happened and that shouldn't happen. So then it comes to the ABC's reporting on the thing, right? And in any kind of journalistic sense, having your editing of an event misrepresenting what actually happened at the event in any journalistic context, that is really bad. But having said that, what they misrepresented was whether or not the Governor General saw some women twerking. And that's the outrage. It's just how dare they misrepresent whether or not the top brass saw some women twerking. Shocking and outrageous. Like, I know, like, in the journalistic context that's bad that if you, like, something's falsified, but at the same time, it's not like they falsified whether or not, like something like major bad politically happened or not, or like who threw the first punch at the Black Lives Matter stuff in the States or whatever, like any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. It was a pretty banal kind of
sexy dancing.
It honestly sounds to me like it was more of a misunderstanding of what actually took place and some editing that kind of made it seem like something was happening when it hadn't. And then obviously they corrected it pretty straightforward thereafter. But it's like, I don't know, the controversy is what exactly that men watched women dancing. Like, what is the it seems inappropriate for like a defense industry event.
I mean, I don't know whether you guys know this, but the Petita Advocate reported that Xi Jinping has actually seen the video and he's just done a big nope, and they're pulling out of the South China Sea. They don't want to deal with that. They don't want to get involved with it. If we're going to start crumping on the front lines, they're done. They're out.
Well, Xi actually was quoted as saying, look, I understood that their military was thick, but I never understood how thick until now. So, if that's what we're up against, we don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
So,
but it's just nuts that like the thing that they misrepresented happening is, I would argue, that's such a non-story.
Yeah.
Like,
the issue is
happen.
You've got a $1 billion vessel which is designed to wheel and deal death with perhaps something that's a little more lighthearted out the front of it. Those two things probably don't quite go together, but whatever. Like, if they've engaged the community, like, the outrage is kind of...
It does seem slightly confected. When I saw that there was a new scandal involving the Australian Defence Force, I said, oh, great, it must be about those developments, this week regarding the investigation into war crimes that allegedly committed in Afghanistan by Australian troops. I said, no, it's much worse than that. It's girls' butts. Strap in, boys.
So there's obviously a huge amount of like sexism and like slut shaming involved here of just people taking umbrage with stuff that they really shouldn't. But I just thought it was funny that everyone was just like, oh, the bloody ABC propaganda manipulating the facts to say that the Governor General saw them twerking.
Mm-hmm.
Outrage. I just thought that was absolute bonkers.
Curiously, the ADF's own propaganda videos of the event neglected to show the 101 Doll Squadron, who are the dance troupe involved.
Doll Squadron. Oh, there you go. Sorry, I didn't realize we were dealing with a whole squadron here. I just assumed it was a regiment, but there you go.
Well, a regiment's actually more than a squadron, but
damn it!
We'll just leave that aside.
What's a squad? A battalion?
Squads. Everything happens in threes. A squadron's to the Air Force. It's a different analogy. Wrong service.
Great.
Anyway. Cool.
Nailed it.
Yeah, but it was just...
So this was all
absolute
happening.
chaos. And then on top of that, the Daily Telegraph their like coverage full of all the puns that they love to do. They also featured, like, while they attributed the images that they had to the ABC, like, so, like, you know, still pictures in the paper of various parts of it, and also saw ABC, all that sort of stuff. In their coverage, they had pictures at the bottom, like, of the Governor General seated there, the brass seated, all that, the top brass people, and all that sort of stuff, and saying, like, the caption underneath was that they watched the dance performance unfold.
Yeah, so it's everyone made the same mistake.
Images ABC. So, like, maybe the ABC did it first and they ran with it. But then that's another thing of like, oh, so the ABC didn't check their sources well enough to verify that that's actually what happened. They did the Daily Telegraph. So where's them getting dragged across the hot coals as well, right?
I think some people just go, oh, the ABC's reported on it. It's obviously right, because they are Australia's
it's a reputable news organization, whereas like someone says, oh, the Daily Telegraph got something wrong, and they're like, yeah, because they're a bunch of corporate shills, like of course they got it wrong. Like the reason it's a story that the ABC got it wrong is because people actually have faith in the ABC as a journalistic institution, whereas they do not have that same faith for the Daily Telegraph.
Yeah, and the ABC can publish some whack shit. Like, for example, was it? I saw something the other day. Hang on, I should have pulled it up here on my phone. But they just ran an article that had the headline, "Why claims about adverse effects of COVID-19 vaccines shared by Malcolm Roberts are misleading." And I said, well, because they were shared by Malcolm Roberts and he's a fucking moron.
Yeah.
Like, why are we publishing this?
Hey, let's amplify this famous dickhead. Famous dickhead, what do you think? Is it something dumb? Famous dickhead goes, I do think something dumb. And they're like, great, that's 800 words. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
To be fair,
like if Malcolm Roberts shared it,
him as much as they did like last election.
Oh, of course, but it's just like we say, if the ABC shares it, so it must be accurate, or the Daily Telegraph says it must be bullshit. It's like, yeah, if Malcolm Roberts shared it, it must be all lies. Like,
can you believe that Alex Jones said something fucking crazy? More at 7.
Anyway, the point is that following all this bullshit, there was like Today Show and all that. We're all like, "Have you heard of twerking?" And then it's seeing people like Chris Ullman twerk and stuff was very odd. And it's like, for fuck's sake, all the other shit like the scandals out of Parliament House haven't finished, right? Can we not get hung up on this horse shit? Anyway, sorry, Adam, I cut you off.
Scott Morrison's gonna dance for us instead.
Yes, the solution to the problem that nobody wanted.
The PR people within the Liberal Party nailing it. Absolutely nailing it.
Absolutely killing it this last couple of months.
Give them an award.
Give them a raise.
Nominate those people. So just 24 hours after slamming the ABC's report on Twerking Dance Troupe, or the Twerking Dance Troupe, the Prime Minister has performed his own bizarre dance routine for the cameras for some miners in Western Australia.
Miners being people that go in and dig stuff out of the ground, not small children, to be clear.
No.
They mine, they call it a mine.
Things in the ground.
Yeah, they call it a mine.
Now, when we say dance, I would class it more as a warm-up, to be fair.
Was it a performance?
All right, boys, limber up. We're going to be doing obviously a big session today, so I want to make sure that you're nice and limber for the session today. Obviously, we're doing some. We're going to be doing some star jumps. We're going to be doing some down dog. Okay, don't be afraid to get into it. I hope you brought your comfortable clothes because it's going to be a big session this afternoon.
And of course, someone obviously thought we better do. If you've ever been in an arts class, you do it when you're doing a warm up. You don't do it silence. You have a soundtrack. You have some music just to get the vibe going. In this case here, they decided to go with Jimmy Barnes' "Working Class Man."
Interesting choice for a dance.
With all these miners. So
what is that? 10 beats per minute. That song.
There's Twiggy Forest.
Oh, as a working class man. It's not a very dancey song, is it?
And I think Scott Morrison makes a comment somewhere that it's not something. He made a reference to being in a bar class, which of course previously
ages ago,
he couldn't pronounce the word bar or knew properly what a bar class was. But anyway,
What did he call it?
What
Was
is
it
a bar
barre?
Barre.
Barre class or something? Yeah.
What is a bar class? What are you talking about?
A bar class. It's a ballet thing. So you,
as in like
you
a ballet
go
bar.
on the bar. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's shots of Scott Morrison effectively.
The only
doing
bar
same
class
movement,
that I
but-
know is a VB bar class. Dun, 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 dun.
So look, the liberal propaganda machine have a good sense of timing, shall we say?
Oh, the dudes were loving it. The shots in the crowd, the boys were loving ScoMo. It's weird though that he is obviously making it his mission in life to destroy the unions, which help protect these workers, rates of pay and penalty rates and safety on the job and all that sort of stuff. He is personally head of the party that is dismantling how they go about doing business and their personal safety. But that's great. He did a stretch in front of me. He's got my vote. LNP, stewards of the economy.
Do your own research, as they say. If Scott Morrison does a squat in front of me, then obviously that counts as that research.
In what universe could it have been anyone's idea that they would want to see Scott Morrison pop in a squat unless he's at Engadine Macca's shitting his pants? Allegedly. Does that help? Okay, so last story of the day. We're just going to bang through it because we've already been recording for an hour. Hundreds of companies have united to oppose voting limits in bills that have been lodged in state governments all across the United States. But some notable abstentions have obviously occurred as well. So this is an article from the New York Times saying Amazon, Google, GM, and Starbucks were amongst those joining a show of solidarity by sort of signing their names to a statement that said, hey, don't disenfranchise black voters, please, because they're also our customers and money is important to us because we are large corporations. To which Mitch McConnell said, hey, you large corporations, get your money out of politics. At which point he promptly exploded because he just literally burst into flames because he was the world's largest hypocrite at that point.
Well, I don't know how you've heard about the Koch brothers. Are they? Anyway,
there's only one brother left, I thought, out of the Koch brothers. But yeah, it's literally the whole point of Mitch McConnell has been to funnel money, dark money, into politics. Like that's been it's just for him to turn around and say, hey, this is unfair. You get your money out of politics because it's not our politics. Get out of here, corporations. That's not what we want. Corporate money. That's crazy. Get out of here. I'm Mitch McConnell.
This, of course, is following the thing we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, which is where the Georgian state parliament, or whatever they call it, effectively passed a law which would be like, you've got to have ID. If you can't feed or give water to people,
give them
voting,
water.
like lining up outside voting booths.
You can't smile at them either. You can't make them feel welcome.
Since then, the Republicans have gone, this is a great idea. And they've started to roll this out. Because, of course, Georgia was, a key state in the whole election. They've started to roll this out. Republican state legislators have started to roll this out across the country in every single state. So businesses
hundreds of bills. So, this is a very coordinated effort from the Republican Party on the state level in all these different states to basically say, hey, you know how we lost the last election? Let's legislate it so that doesn't happen ever again. Which obviously seems fundamentally opposed to the idea of democracy, but there you go. A notable absent player in all of this is Coca-Cola and Delta. So they've condemned the Georgia law that we just mentioned after it was passed, but they declined to add their names to this statement that we just talked about with Starbucks and all these other guys.
That's because Delta Airlines are receiving kickbacks from a Georgian.
Here's the thing. So here's the interesting part. So Delta says, like, we support voting rights, and basically the GOP turned around and said, what the fuck you say? And said, hey, that's cool. We'll withdraw all of those tax what's it called? Sort of like tax credit situation. Like you basically Delta Airlines based in Georgia saves millions of dollars a year on tax based on this special taxation situation. And the Republican Party said, either you side with us or, it's a nice company there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. Like it is literal standover tactic. Like, keep your money out of politics. And as long as it's, the other side's politics. When it's our side of politics, we will fucking, keep paying us, keep donating to us, keep siding with us. Otherwise, we will fucking, ruin your lives. Like it
all goes into a super PAC, which is completely legal and above board. I don't know what you're talking about, George. It's not dodgy at all.
I just don't. Coca-Cola is obviously a massive employer in Georgia. Which is where the company is headquartered. Like these are huge institutions that have massive say over what happens in politics, right? Because they're all donors, they are. It just seems extraordinary to me that, the GOP, rather than saying, gee, all of the donor class is also against this idea, as well as all of the populace, the only people that are really for this idea are a handful of psychotic far-right corporate donors. Maybe we shouldn't do this? No, that idea set doesn't seem to have crossed their heads. It's just, great, well, we need to punish them for not being on our side. It just seems like the Republican Party is just fucking combusting right now. It is absolutely such a shit show.
But the legislations, a lot of these states they're still getting drawn up, and there's
nothing they can do on a state level to deal with this. They're going to have to pass HR1 on a federal level to make sure that all of these, so basically there is a floor for a basic standard of voting rights across the country, nationwide, regardless of all of these state laws. And the only way they can do that is if they get Senator Joe Manchin to pull his fucking finger out and do something about the filibuster in order to make sure that they can actually pass legislation with the majority that they have. It's funny that with Republicans have a majority, they can do anything. They're just like Megatron, fucking unlimited power, like Jafar from Aladdin. But the Democrats have the same majority, and they're like, oh, but we need to convince this one guy. And this one guy's like, I'm not going to be convinced. The end of democracy. Oh, well. And that's just...
Yeah, because Manchin's like the contrarian Democrat.
Yeah, senator from West Virginia, basically a Republican in terms of, it doesn't align with the Democratic Party on the majority of their issues. It's a very conservative Democrat.
Why the fuck is he in the part? Oh.
That's an excellent question, Tom.
Okay. Yeah. Cool beans. I just think it's also interesting seeing these companies like sign this statement and all that sort of stuff where it's like, Amazon, you care about people's voting rights, huh? How about paying your taxes? That'd do great things for these communities.
That'd be a great way to support democracy.
Other ways, but yeah, that'd be a great way to support these people.
What if there was a
way
you
apparently care about
that you could fund the democracy that you allegedly care so much about using dollars deducted from your account on a quarterly basis that would go to that democracy and keep it nice and healthy? Yeah, one wonders.
Yeah, maybe you too, Google. Maybe you too could do that.
But look, I mean, Jeff Bezos, he's going into space, so it's all worth it.
Space can have him.
Oh, no, wait. It turns out the thing he was heading up to win the NASA contract actually got lost to SpaceX. So I don't know what they're going to do.
Right, so Elon Musk can keep doing it.
Whatever.
Yep.
Good.
Space can have both of them. They can go start their own fucking dude colony on Mars, and they can fuck off and leave the rest of us here better off without them. Go, piss off.
I'd probably join them if I could.
On that note, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at George Tsibos, or TikTok.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us all down to SpaceX, where we'll be cracking open the skulls and feasting on the goo inside of the of the billionaires. No, that's not what we're doing. Love a billionaire. Certainly would never eat the rich. Thanks for listening, guys.
What?
Huh? Love your faces. Huh?
What?
I love this delay. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
I love Elon.
You guys seriously aren't on board with eating the rich?
No, because I like rockets.
We can still have rockets, Adam.
Oh.